Hi guys and welcome back. In the last episode we modified the front axle on BedBug, and in this episode it's time to get it back in. So here's the modified axle for BedBug as shown in the previous video. If you haven't seen that, you might want to check it out. What we did is we clearanced these top areas here to give a bit more room on the side of the body. Not only that, the beam has been shortened a couple of inches and we've also added some adjusters. And what I've done ahead of time is I've just cleaned up these suspension arms and given them a coat of paint. Not only that, I did the same thing to the steering box too. And what I've done both sides is I've just stripped down the hub assemblies. So what I need to do is get the suspension arms on before I fit the beam, but that does mean I need to modify these springs first. As we've narrowed the beam a couple of inches, these little dimples that hold the arm on are now an inch too far out. And what you can do at this point is just drill the dimple 1 inch further in, but there is actually another method that I'd like to show you. So what I've done, just using one of the old grub screws, I've just put 2 lock nuts on there, and then what I've done is I've center punched and I've used a pillar drill just to drill the center. And this little pillar drill, well, it's a new addition to the family. It's something that I think I need in the future, so I did invest in one the other day. It's a relatively budget one, but it seems to have done the job pretty well. So what I've just done is I've just pushed the leaf springs back into their position, and I've taken the adjusters off just so I can look down here, and inside here is the center dimple. Just make sure that's lined up and then refit the grub screws and the adjusters. So what I've done is I've refitted the arms and the little seals, and I just used a socket and a hammer just to drift them home. So what I can do now is use our pre-drilled grub screw. I can install that, and what I can do is just run the drill bit down the center, and then I know exactly where I need to drill these for the dimples. So what I've done is I've just left the witness mark of the drill bit in the center here. That's where I need to drill the new dimples on these springs. I just need to repeat it on the other arms. So that's the leaf springs marked with my drill bit. What I need to do now is remove the leaf springs. So back off with the adjusters, back off with the arms, remove the leaf springs, and then I need to make the dimples. So what I've just done is I've used the pillar drill just to re-drill these dimples like this on both sets of the leaf springs. And one thing I will say, this kind of material is super tough. I mean, it's sprung steel, it's very difficult to drill through, so make sure you use a decent drill bit. So what I need to do now is refit these leaf springs and get those arms fitted again. So that's the arms now refitted, and you just need to make sure that the dimple that you drilled lines up where the grub screws go in the arms, and you can go ahead now and refit these grub screws. I've also done up the adjusters in the middle too. So as the beam has been narrowed 2 inches, which means I do have an extra inch either side of these leaf packs. So what I'm going to do is cut these off flush. And originally these leaf packs, these original ones, the early ones, are welded at the ends. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a blob of weld at the ends of these leaf packs as well. So if I do have to take them apart, the leaves won't splay out and it'll be very difficult to put them back together. So just on another note, these are early type of leaf spring packs, so they do have 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom. So if this weld wasn't there, it'd be very difficult to line it all up. But on a ball joint beam, they actually only have a single strip at the top, and they're not so difficult to put back together. But if you do end up taking the leaf springs in and out on a ball joint beam, you can use zip ties or elastic bands just to keep them together. So that's the leaf springs cut, and then what I've done is I've just ran a weld across the top of those leaf springs just to keep those leaf spring packs together. So that's pretty much all the work done on this beam. I need to now get it fitted back into the car. There might need to be a little bit of clearancing just on the side here where the dimple is on the back of the shock tower. And previously I did actually make up a couple of little rubber mountings here. So I've already bolted the beam into position, and I've started fitting up the hub assembly on the other side. So now's a good time to talk about shimming your pins, which are these fellas here, and this hub assembly bolts into this position here and is held in top and bottom with the pins, and at the back there they're secured with pinch bolts. So when this is bolted into position like this, you need to get the angle of the dangle quite right on this one, and that involves measuring the offset so you can use shims to pack it out so it runs nice and true. So the first thing you need to do is take your shims off the pins and off the assemblies and give them a count. There's 2 systems here, one's a 10 shim system and the other one's an 8 shim system. And the only real difference is how many shims you use on the front and the back of the pin. And it's pretty simple stuff. All you do is you get your straight edge like this here, and then you measure this distance here. In my case, it's about 8 millimeters. So now I know the offset of 8 millimeters, I can then shim these pins accordingly and refit this hub assembly. So just on my phone I managed to get a link pin shim chart, which is great. It gives me what shims to use on what offset. So with an 8mm offset here, on this side of the top pin I need to put 4 shims, and the back side of it 6 shims, and the bottom one is 6 shims on this side and 4 on the inner. So to install these pinch bolts, just pop them in the hole there and just rotate the pin until it drops into position. Then what you can do is just get the nut started on the other side, and then you can rotate the pin again until you feel that this pin is tightening up. Not too tight though, just enough to get rid of any slack in that pin, and then just do the pinch bolt up. So that's all built up, ready to go. I just need to fit the backing plate and the brakes. But it goes without saying, if you do have excessive play up and down here or in the pins or any damage, you will be looking at a rebuild or replacement parts. So what I've done is refitted the front brake drums, and I've also loosely fitted the steering box down there in the column. So the next thing I need to look at is the track rod arms. So after narrowing that front axle, my track rod arms now are going to be too long, and what I'd suggest at this point is buy new arms that are pre-shortened. But in this case, I just want to get it together, and I'm going to show you a neat trick how to shorten track rod arms. So I'll be doing this as a temporary measure, and it's totally up to you whether you decide to use these on the vehicle long term. And basically all you do is you cut your track rod arm like this, you remove the amount of material. In my case it's going to be 1 inch either side. You then get a strong piece of metal bar like so, and you insert it into the hole like this. Prior to that, chamfer the ends, and then you can actually join them together and weld them. And something really cool about these early arms, which is pretty rare to see, are grease nipples installed on the actual ball joint parts of the track rods. So that's the arms now welded. Something I forgot to mention, another thing you can do is you can actually trim down the ends of the shaft and re-tap them if you do have the right size taps. So what I'm going to do is refit the arms. I'm not even going to bother grinding down the welds or painting them up or anything like that. As I said before, this is a temporary measure on this car. But between me, you and the gate post, I have actually used this method quite a few times on my own vehicles that have been road legal. But obviously, as a disclaimer, I would recommend buy new arms to do this job. If you do cut and weld them, and even if you do reinforce them, there is a chance that they're not going to be as strong as a one piece of steel. So there we go, that's the front end back on the ground now, and what I did before I lowered it to the ground is I set the adjusters to their lowest point, and I also fit the stock size tyres, which are obviously too tall, but it does give you an idea how it could sit. So at this point, I'm not entirely sure what tyre sizes are going to be used on BedBug, and I'm not even sure that these wheels are going to stay on there. I've got a feeling these will be swapped out as well. So for the time being, I'm not going to do any more on the suspension and leave it at this. And something I mentioned at the end of the last episode is we've had a bit of a development with the rear window on BedBug, so I'll show you now. So in the video where I put a rear window aperture in the back of BedBug, a lot of you put in the comments that it'd be really nice to have a rear opening pop-out window. And look what we've got here. So at this point, I can't really install this rear window as I don't have a seal, so I don't want to start drilling holes for the hinge, otherwise it may not close properly. But I do like keeping you guys in the loop, and there you go, that's what the window's going to look like, although it'll be painted a different colour. And what it does is, it's actually hinged at the top there, and it's got some catches at the bottom. Flick the catches up and you can actually lift the back window open. So something I need to address is BedBug's rear bumper, and I do have an aftermarket chrome bumper, extremely beaten up aftermarket chrome bumper to use on the rear. But as you can see, if I was to use this bumper here, well, it's the wrong shape. The back of the panel there is flat and the bumper is seriously curved. So what I need to do is I need to get this bumper well flat, a little bit more straight than it actually is. I'm really not worried about the finish on this either. I'll be stripping off as much chrome as possible and these bumpers will be painted. So the method I'm going to use to get this bumper straight is going to be extremely crude. I'm just going to make lots of incisions, top and bottom, and then see if I can flatten it down a bit. And if I can get this flat enough to meet the panel at the back, the other issue I've got is it's probably too long, so I'm going to have to cut and weld these ends as well. So just by cutting the incisions and then I kind of stamped on it, the bumper is now looking relatively flat. So at this point, after tweaking that rear bumper, I'm pretty happy that I can do something with it and make it fit. So the next thing I need to look at is the bumper irons. So I need to make some slots at the back here so I can install the bumper irons. What I'll do is I'll template the front valance so I know where the bumper irons are going to sit and where they're going to be slotted. Another thing is this panel, I don't actually have anything behind it, so I'm going to have to reinforce it in some way, probably with some angle or box steel. So what I've done at the back here, I've templated one of the cutouts on the front valance, and then I've transferred it to this back panel here. Just used a hole cutter top and bottom, and I've just cut these lines out here just to make an oval shape. And then what I've done is I've just used a piece of box steel just so I can make a mount for the bumper iron, and I've also just welded in some M8 nuts there just as captive nuts. And then what I can do is just tack weld this section behind the back panel like this here, and I'm able to bolt a bumper iron on. And on the inside there really isn't any kind of support here, so what I need to do is once this is welded in position, I need to just box it in with a bit of angle iron or some box steel to get this area really nice and strong. So that's the mounts welded into position and the bumper irons into position too. So the next thing I need to look at is this bumper. I've already made the incisions and squashed it down. I perhaps need to make a couple more just to get this area a little bit more flat. I will be losing the corners either side and making the center part fit first, and then once I'm happy with where I want the bumper to sit, I will then re-weld on the edges. So what I've done is I've chopped the ends off the bumper and then concentrated on this center bit, and I've got it as straight as I can. It was very damaged and very bananaed. And then what I've done is I've just welded over the incisions that I've made here, ground them back, and I bolted it back on. So what I need to do now is concentrate on these corners, and you can see here this panel is very flat and I would like it to have more of this rounded shape here, so I'm going to allow for that. I'm going to make the bumper almost kind of curve around ever so slightly, and then I'm going to form this panel to make it curved round as well. And this is what I'm thinking, something like this. I've just clamped those corner pieces into position. And I actually like the way the bumper just slightly curves round the corner here, because I can just make this panel here curve with the bumper, and it actually looks quite factory as well. So nobody likes doing the job twice, but things like making a custom bumper for the back of Project BedBug is if I weld it all up and I'm not quite happy, I can still tweak it before it goes into paint. So I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to weld those corners where they sit on this bumper. Let's see what happens. And there we go, BedBug has now got a rear bumper. So that's the bumper corners now welded into place, and I've also welded up the incisions and ground it back. And as the bumper was too long, I did have to remove a section either side. It's about 3 inches, so the whole bumper is about 6 inches shorter than standard. And the bumper mounting holes are on the piece of steel that I've cut off the bumper, so I had to re-drill them here. So at this point, I'm really happy with the way this bumper came out. I mean, it was such a banana shape before, and I'm pretty surprised that I managed to get it relatively straight and managed to keep these little corners like that. It still looks a bit Volkswagen-like. So the next thing I need to do with this bumper is it's ready for body working. I will be body working this and painting it. But also now the bumper's complete, I can get rid of these nasty corners down here. They're almost squared off, and I did want them rounded off. So now I know where the bumper's going to sit. That's easily achievable. So recently a subscriber sent me a photo and they said, you have to have a look at this. And I looked at this photo and I was like, I can't believe it. Somebody has actually made another BedBug just like this one with the same rear end. And then I looked at the photo closely and then I realised that it was a Type 2 pickup truck, and the back end is almost a carbon copy of what I've created on the back of BedBug. So we managed to get a bit done on the front and a bit done on the rear of BedBug in today's episode. So I'm going to leave it there for today. It still is over 40 degrees in this workshop and it is sapping my energy. I did order an air cooler the other day, so hopefully that will turn up and I can show you what it is on the next episode. And then maybe we can get more stuff done on Project BedBug. I really appreciate you guys tuning in as always, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Cheers!